All right, everybody. What's happening? I'm Dr. Thunder. This is Case Closed, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sundays, either on my channel or Ike Ogiamian's channel. And we are the best, highest level conversation on the most relevant topics in this space with an all-star panel. So, you see the topic: Ivy League anti-Semites or pushback against Zionist agenda. Oh snap. I'm gonna have to be careful. I actually had a stream on it was a variety of topics. This was one of my Two Dads React shows that totally got pulled down. Didn't seem like anything was said, so we'll treat this carefully. But again, the topic: Ivy League anti-Semites or pushback against Zionist agenda. And a few of the things that we'll be wrestling with. There's been a recent upsurge of reported anti-Semitism in college campuses. Jewish students are expressing fear for their safety. Should college campuses condemn hate speech against Jewish students? And of course, I would argue, sure, as long as you are equal with condemning hate speech against everyone, because everyone deserves the same protection under the law. But certainly, Jewish students would be included. And that is if you believe that hate speech is actually a thing or not, if you have considered where free speech ends and hate speech begins. And then another issue associated with that is, of course, speech that is actually calling for violence against, or negligent speech, which directly can cause injury, harm, or death, as in screaming fire where there is no fire in a movie theater. Would things be different if there was a rise in anti-black or anti-rainbow rhetoric and demonstrations? Are college campuses consistent in their application of the free speech principle? Should Jewish donors continue to pull funding from institutions with a tepid response to anti-Semitic behavior in speech? And a woman attempts to burn down, also a topic we're discussing is this woman that attempts to burn down MLK Jr.'s house. Does the MLK message of integration and color-blindness resonate with the current zeitgeist? These topics and much more we will be discussing again with an all-star panel today on Case Closed. Let's go. Warning: some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. All right, everyone, like the video, like, share, comment, subscribe. Become a channel member where you'll get access to all archived videos, support black male media, support independent media, super chats enabled, super thanks for the Replay Gang, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Dr. Thunder Music, all one word. Spell out the word doctor. Spell out the word doctor. And if you'd like to feed me sandwiches, hit that Cash App. Sandwich Gang in the building. And without further ado, case closed.
Without further ado, indeed, case closed, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to jump right into this. Shout out to LAR. Shout out to Kaizo. Okay. Now you heard Dr. Thunder in the beginning. Upsurge in anti-Semitism. And we understand the emotional temperature, even if we have not been to any one of these campuses. We understand where the students will be. They will be on the side of the perceived oppressor against the, uh, against the oppressor. And on the side of the perceived oppressed, I meant to say, right? We've had incidents such as ISIS flag being waved at a student senate meeting, right, with Jewish students present, and the Jewish students needed security to leave the meeting. Now, I'm going to start the first question like this. Like Jews, right, the Jewish students, Jewish faculty, and Jewish donors to these universities supported the condemnation of the George Floyd killing. Several campuses were shut down in solidarity, right, with Black people, Black Lives Matter, and all that kind of stuff. So the question, let's start with Kaizo, is should Blacks rally and support the Jews against anti-Semitic agitation, given the fact, that, and it's not just a new thing that Jews have kind of been like fellow travelers with African Americans. It's not a strainless relationship, but they've kind of been fellow travelers in the struggle, if you will. But should African Americans, should Blacks rally and support the Jews against anti-Semitic agitation? What do you say, Kaizo?
Well, let's start with the facts. The first ghettos were actually Jewish ghettos, right? So you're right. African Americans and Jews share a lot in common. They're following the same path. But apart from that, right? If you look at the situation right now, I think African Americans generally are being sort of led into this new postmodern approach to morality and geopolitics, which is really a liberal feminist ideology. I say Black Americans need to be focused. I would rather, if I was a Black American, be aligned with the Jews because of proximity to power, proximity to a oppressed group within your own jurisdiction, pun intended. If you're looking at an oppressed group from outside of that jurisdiction, whom doesn't actually have much to offer you either, because here's the issue, right? Black people always, and I say always, rally for other groups, right? They rallied for the immigrants. Now they're being overtaken by the Mexicans, population wise. They rally for everyone else. So if Black people want to rally for people that rallied for you. So yes, if what you said is correct about the general Jewish support for Black Lives Matter and other sort of Black left movements, whether you agree with them or not, that's a separate discussion. It's the spirit of intention that matters in this case. Then yes, I would rather align with someone that has proximity to me as opposed to someone that has some presupposed, um, oppression, proximity from miles and miles away.
Gotcha. Rather than just use the calculus of intersectionality to decide whom you're going to be rallying with, why not rally with somebody with whom you've been in the trenches with, and whom have supported you historically and also recently? And the footage is there, the statements are there from 2020 and whatnot, in terms of what Jewish students, professors, donors, and such kind of did. There was a rallying in solidarity with Blacks, and I hear what you're saying here, and also the fact that Jewish people actually do have power, and maybe you want to cozy up to that gang rather than the dusty Mexicans, right? Ain't that right, LAR? But LAR, right? What do you say to this question? What do you say to the question? Should blacks be saying, "Hey, forget the Israeli thing, right? Let's not lump in Israel versus Hamas and then make this crazy generalization and talk about the Jewish people and such. This is unacceptable, right? If it were blacks being condemned and generalized in this way, I wouldn't like it. So calm down with the anti-Semitism. Should blacks rally and support the Jews against anti-Semitism? What do you say, Eliar?
For us, it's one of those things where what is the actual anti-Semitism? Is a critique is anti-Semitic? Is stating what's actually going on between two groups anti-Semitic? Like a lot of times, what goes on is anti-Semitism is just a word now for anything. So, there's a bunch of anti-Semitic stuff happening. We never really actually dig into what is actually anti-Semitic that's happening. Like, what do you want us to have your back from? It's just nothing, and that becomes an issue because guess what? What if there's really nothing there? Is there something like George Floyd that's happening there? Or I mean, is there
No
something
one has been
like what happened to the
no one has had the
Palestinians
knee
here?
treatment yet. But let me say this one thing so that you can at least chew on it, right? So I mentioned the Hamas, the ISIS flag, for example, and then there's this
Mhm.
chant which generally equates to genocide, right? I mean, people chant all kinds of stuff, right? But from the river to the sea, basically, it is a chant that says, from the river to the sea, you need to wipe these guys off of this particular strip of land here, right over in Israel. So when students are saying from the river to the sea, and when Jewish students are needing security and certain other kinds of things like this, no one is getting shot or nothing like that. But it's that kind of thing. So do you support and say, hey, you need to cool it? These students are not responding. Yeah, anyway, so go ahead. What do you say in that context?
Gotcha. I, I say that in a general sense, Black people don't in America do not support any type of apartheid. So in one aspect, it's like telling somebody, you don't like them people saying from the river to the sea. Okay, well I can see you might see a problem with that. Do you think they see a problem with you trying to exterminate them from the river to the sea? Why they're saying that? That's an issue. Like people want support for doing something that is basically a war crime. So like what are we supposed to we're supposed to support that? Because what? And people don't want to say the reality is this. The history of Black Americans and Jewish Americans relationship, it ain't really all friend. Do you realize how many things that community in particular did to sabotage us and still say that we're friends? That's a problem. We're friends. We've had a struggle together. Oh, by the way, we're gonna overcharge you for stuff because we're white and we can because white people won't rent it to you. Yeah, but we're friends. Oh, we're friends. But we're gonna have an institution that makes sure we can get rid of affirmative action in Black businesses. That just recently happened, but we're friends. But somebody's waving a flag and we're just supposed to jump up and go, hey, we were actually an intricate part of America's fight against Germany. And one of the major reasons why America was actually winning against them to actually help the Jewish people who were in the Holocaust. So we have a threshold for right and wrong. We don't support people when they're doing something that's wrong. That's what we don't do. And we can't walk around and say, "Oh, these people are just innocent." They're not. I'm not saying the things that happen to them are right either, but I can't help you if you instigate a fight and then you're mad because somebody's fighting back. Doesn't make sense. I'm done.
Shout out, ladies and gentlemen. Again, as you come in, click that like button. Super chat your
Yeah, I
questions.
would like
Super chat your comments.
I would like to know. I would like to know Eliar's position. Eliar, are you taking the side more of the Arabs or the Jews?
Which one is right? What's right? I'm taking the side of what's right. If the world says what you do is a war crime, you're absolutely wrong at that point. What
All
are
right.
we
Now, and
discussing?
also
Okay,
what
so
Eliar.
let me ask you one question.
Go ahead.
Dusty delays. Go ahead. But okay. So let
Yeah,
me
so the
because
question is,
we're gonna address all these points that are being brought up. Kaiser, hold on one second, because Eliar brings up an interesting point, right? So after 10/7, after the Hamas attack on Israel, right? Israel immediately launched attacks in Gaza. Since then, and over 16,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed. Reportedly, 40% of them being children. Violence has continued to escalate as well. Okay, and after a short kind of ceasefire, Israel has resumed its airstrikes in Gaza, targeting certain targets that perhaps they were able to get as a result of the ceasefire. They were able to kind of pick up some more targets, and then they struck those. So one can talk about the acts which can be described as genocidal of the Israelis, right? But the question is, and we will get to that, does that justify lumping in the Jewish students, right? That kind of a thing, right? Because I'm just a Jew, Mr. Libowitz's son over here from New York City with Libowitz and Schmidt or whatever. And here I am at Harvard, and I don't know about Israel. I was born in America, that kind of a thing, right? But we'll tease out those aspects. And Kaizo, you get a chance to ask a question right after Dr. Thunder answers the first question on the table, which is basically, what do you say about blacks rallying in support, solidarity with the Jews in this case? And to specify, it's against condemnation of the Jewish students separating the whole Israel Palestine thing.
Yeah, I think more than one thing can be true at the same time. So the one thing is definitely, I'm in solidarity with anyone that's being victimized by threats based on their ethnicity, based on their religion. Okay, that's 100%. Now, I would like the same thing in return, based on religion or ethnicity, and also based on gender. I would like the same thing. Okay, but I'm in solidarity with those that believe they are being victimized by threats. So that's true. But I can also take a different position with this constant battle, this constant war between the Palestinians and Israel. I can say, with respect to individual acts, I can evaluate them. I can take a more nuanced approach. I don't have to say the Palestinians were clearly wrong. I don't have to say that Israel was clearly wrong as a blanket, sort of statement. There's been a lot of violence in that part of the world. A lot of things happening. I frankly am not sure how it benefits me or my interests here by picking a side. I don't know how that benefits me. I know how it benefits me here with respect to the way that people are treated here, but I don't know how that benefits me from picking a side in a location that I do not live. I don't pay taxes that, towards that. Now maybe my tax money is being used to fund one side over the other side, but that's not my call. But unless there is a specific benefit that I believe that I can derive, I don't know what the plus is for me saying I'm team Israel or I'm team Palestine. Okay, so what I prefer to do is to itemize specific events and say, yes, this seems like this was too much, and this is a problem. 18,000 deaths, that seems pretty egregious to me. I can say that seems to be over the line, and I can also say, well, the behavior of Hamas, what got this thing started off. We can say, yeah, that seems to clearly be over the line. But with respect to what my general sentiment is, or my general allegiance is, I don't have one. I don't have a general allegiance. The dog in the fight that I'm most interested and concerned about is black men and boys. How does me taking a side benefit black men and boys here? Okay, and I know that due to tribalism, which is, it's a strong thing. I'm not a tribalist. Okay, I'm going to tend to go where I think something is correct. What is right? I'm going to ask that question and then make decisions not based on the tribe. That is just, and folks will probably be disappointed. They probably want me to take a team, but I'm not going to do it. So
There you go. Clearly stated. Kaizo, get ready with your delayed, dusty internet, and poke at the points you wanted to bring up with LAR regarding Arabs versus Jews or whatever.
Yeah, so what I wanted to say is that if you look at the differences between the Jews and the Arabs, you might, okay, so from your analysis, LAR, and perhaps even Dr. Thunder to an extent, depending on the circumstances, but it appears to the world that Israel is an aggressive bully because they're stronger and than Hamas, right? And people believe that the retaliation of Israel was, more than perhaps should have been. But here's the thing: when you're dealing with a petulant child that's refusing to just, bow down and kneel to you, if you just go respond to them in a nicer sort of reciprocal sort of response, then unfortunately you're just egging them on to keep behaving badly. I think honestly Israel had to do what it did, and if you are looking at it from an objective stance, sure, what Israel did is wrong. But if you're looking at it from a more sort of cultural stance, Arabs are way worse than the Jews. Arabs literally stopped enslaving black people like 1980s, right? If you look at Saudis, Yemen, and all these countries, even if you look in Africa, all the Arab countries like Mauritania, there's still black slaves all over the place. So when I look at the differences between the history of black people in general, between Judean people and Arabs, I'm seeing Arabs as, unfortunately, people I can't trust. And in terms of free speech, which is something that you both value, the benefits, or rather the facade of democracy, if we are going to at least say we value these things to an extent, Israel, although does violate human rights to extents, the Arabs are way worse. Like, so in a way, I would rather, let's say, support a group of people that across time are more likely to be civilized. Because again, we're all Westerners here. We all believe in these Western ideas, right? That came from the Bible. We don't believe in the ideas that came from the Quran, which is far more barbaric. So I think that. So I guess the question slash statement is, well, LAR, I believe you're putting hope in the ideals of postmodernness and humanity, that if you take the right side, somehow the world would order itself and it will trickle down to all the dusties like us, as opposed to taking the side that's, I believe is more practical, which is Israel.
I saw a comedian say recently, oh, you just showed up for this season of this episode between Israel and Palestine, so that's why you have this opinion. First and foremost, our tax dollars have been going to Israel for decades.
Yeah.
So they're getting money every year. And with that money, they've displaced a bunch of Palestinians every year. So is it about siding with somebody? Our money's already on their side. Now you got to ask the question about free speech. That's the crux of an issue in America, because it seems like it's free speech unless you say something about that particular group. Then it ain't free speech no more. And you got to take into consideration, because this is America, it's like, wait a minute, let me get this right. We don't have free speech in this country talking about this group who we're subsidizing in that over there in that country. So what happens if people just say, let's just cut the money off then? Well, think about it. If America says we're not subsidizing Israel anymore, would that be anti-Semitic? Because
An interesting
ultimately,
question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, you got it. That's becoming the point of all of this stuff. It's like, listen, there comes a point where people are looking at what actually has happened in totality and going, okay, enough is enough. And what I mean by enough is enough is this. See, maybe you don't remember this, but I do. Do you remember the Donald Sterling thing with the Los Angeles Clippers? See, what you forget about that whole thing was that whole recording that came out, and he had the little black Hispanic girlfriend, whatever she was. They released the whole recording at first because he had an issue with her being around black guys. And then she said it initially on the recording, like, yo, you're Jewish and Israel has black people. What about them? He said, those people are dogs. And then they cut that part out because it only lasted like 3 or 4 days. And then they skipped over that part. They took it off. Even TMZ took it off. So what I'm saying is this. You have two groups that are racist towards black people, but you want black people to support one of them. For what reason?
So I want to pose an interesting way of kind of laying out what Kaizo said, and to repeat what Kaizo said. And I think we addressed this, unless I'm tripping, I think we did talk about Israel and Palestine a few weeks ago. And I mentioned that the Arab way of being and the mode of that heroic medieval, and none of this is an insult. That way of being is either you're gonna go full force and go barbaric with them, or you're just gonna end up losing the PR battle long term and bleeding both yourself and them over centuries, because it's not gonna stop. Okay. Now, you could say that's obviously a biased position, but I know a thing or two about desert dwellers. Again, no shade. I'm just, it may sound like I'm being, but no, there is a culture there. These people do not quit, and that, as a matter of fact, can be commendable, right? You could be like, hey, you know what? These guys, they never give up, that kind of a thing. But the point is this: where would you rather live? And you don't have to answer this. It's kind of a rhetorical question, and I want to address something to Dr. Thunder. But it's like, we know Israel, right? Mr. Kaiser talked about the free speech, and it's kind of Western, and you could just move there, and you would not even be able to know the difference whether you were there or in Houston, Texas, or Dallas, something like that, right? It's just, okay. Versus, would you rather live under one of these Islamic states? I think most Americans will say, I'll pick one versus the other. But again, it's a rhetorical question, right? Well, perhaps let me ask Dr. Thunder directly, right? um, where would you rather live? Maybe you don't know a lot about these different societies, right? But maybe you know a little bit, and maybe you need to do some more research. But if I say, hey, pick Lebanon or Syria or this or that, or Israel, um,
Israel.
where do you think you would land? Okay, he said Israel. Okay, so and I think it's not an unimportant question there. But
No, and the
ladies and
reason,
gentlemen,
but the reason is,
yeah.
but the reason is not necessarily because of an allegiance or an alignment with all actions taken by the Israel state, nor is it necessarily a refutation or condemnation of all actions taken by the Palestinians. Because as I said, I don't have a dog in the fight. That is not my concern. I mean, I don't want to see atrocities. I don't want to see anybody die, anybody struggle, suffer. Is little of that as possible is my preference. But I think that black men have to begin to. We did a show, and LAR was the moderator for it. It was on the Roger Report. It was on that channel, and it was a panel. Let's see here, who was on that panel? Green Gorilla. Let's
Dennis
see here.
Sperling, BGS.
Dennis Sperling, BGS. See, I was on there, like I said, and who am I forgetting?
Black Uru.
Yeah, that's right, Black Uru, who's in the chat. Shout out to you, Black Uru. And it was about the legal separation between black men and women. And this was not, the point here is not about disconnecting associations with black females, because our sisters, our mothers, our wives, and perhaps even if we're not married, those that we have the most affinity for are black women. It's about disassociating from folks that their politics is opposed and opposite of ours. Their interests are not our interests. They're being served by a particular party that has no interest in serving us. And so to clearly be able to state what our objectives are, what's important to us, and to be able to go after those things aggressively, assertively, without the need to apologize for certain folks that are in your association and how they'll be maybe not served as well. See, the reason I'm saying what I'm saying with respect to this Israel and Palestine, which side should I pick, and all of this, and the reason I refuse to pick a side is because I don't see how any of the interests expressed there have anything to do with me, and have anything to do with black men, have anything to do even with the black community, if there is such a thing. I don't see how that is necessarily a benefit to pick a side. Again, I can align with values that I think are positive and perhaps even more congruent with my own views, my own ideals. And I can acknowledge that in the Middle East, the most developed area, which is going to seem the most like living in America, is Israel. But these are all separate issues. So.
Well played there. Well played. I think you navigated that snare field well. Okay. So let's continue in this particular regard here because we're talking about the campuses. Okay, now Larry Summers, I believe he was the president of Harvard for like 2 minutes before he said something about men and women being different, and he got chased out of there. Okay, this is all within the context of free speech, right? So universities, especially the Ivy League universities, have not had a good record. They've kind of been biased. They've held the general oppressor versus oppressed type of situation for a while. The president of Harvard, I believe her name is Miss Claudine Gale, a black woman, by the way, was asked at a Senate hearing recently if calling for genocide of Jews was was a bad thing, and she said, if it doesn't translate into action, and you have to look at it on a case by case basis. I couldn't help but wonder, would she say the same thing if it was calling for the genocide of blacks, or if the KKK was rallying, taking a march down the center of campus? I don't think that they would have had the same kind of a situation. So the question to you first, Kaizo, is should the college campuses condemn the hate speech against Jewish students? And also, let's bring in what the points that LAR has been bringing up, which is what are some good ways of stating your discontent, or saying that you're not down with what Israel is doing, with the 18,000 people and 40% being children and all these other kinds of things. You have a ceasefire, then you go back in, you just continue crushing people that can't fight against you. Okay. What can you say about condemning that act, but also saying, hey, you can't go around picking on Jewish students, whether we like them or not, or whatever, right? Should the college campuses condemn the hate speech against Jewish students, and what are effective ways of separating between these Jewish students and Israel? Begin with Kaizo and then LAR and Dr. Thunder.
Yeah, so I think I want to start by saying, according to my intuition, I don't have facts, but I don't think they're necessarily allowing hate speech on basically innocent Jewish students. I think it's usually the Jewish students who are unequivocally pro-Israel, which is a slightly different thing, which is Zionism. So generally, it isn't just anti-Jewish sentiment; it's actually anti-Zionist statement. So Jewish students who align with Zionism or feel that Zionism is somehow a protection or a way for them to get their Lebensraum, right, a living space over there, then I think those are the ones which the students are against, the campuses. So to answer your second question, whether this campus administration or anyone in power do something to protect the Jewish students, 100%. But as I said, I don't think it's an issue of innocent Jewish students who are non-aligned or so-called aligned with Palestine. I think it is against Zionism, and it just happens that the two are, linked quite strongly. Because if you look at it, right, if you're a Jewish student, it's within your benefit to choose to support the Zionist nation because they are the ones who gave you a living space. It was them who lobbied the British government to give them Palestine, for example. So if that's the case, I think it's an anti-Zionist thing. It just happens that Zionists tend to be Jews, and it just happens that Jews tend to be Zionists.
So
Hey, real quick. I have a small clip from this. Hey, wait a minute, I'm gonna have to change the way that it's oriented real quick. From, yeah. Here, hold up here. Okay, yeah, I can move this down a little bit. This is from this this business that we were talking about this earlier. This is from this, I guess it's like a congressional hearing, and I can play some of this. There we go. I'll play this little clip here, and we can maybe fit that in.
It can be harassment.
Okay, so here we go.
At Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no? If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment. Yes. I am asking specifically calling for the genocide of Jews. Does that constitute bullying or harassment? If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment. So the answer is yes. It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman. It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill. So is your testimony that you will not answer yes?
If it if the
Yes
speech
or no?
becomes if the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment. Yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide? The speech is not harassment? This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
The answer is yes. And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual. Targeted at an individual.
It's targeted at Jewish students, Jewish individuals. Do you understand your testimony is dehumanizing them? Do you understand that dehumanization is part of anti-Semitism? I will ask you one more time. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric.
And is it anti-Semitic rhetoric?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric, when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and
Honest,
this
I
is
agree
why
with
you
them.
should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board.
I actually agree with them. Logically speaking, they're not.
It's interesting. Logically speaking, I agree with them as well, but I'm wondering what the downside was to just saying yes. In other words, yes could be yes within context, right? Because everybody, you can always zoom into context, right? But why do you have to say the within context part, right? You could just say yes. And then when it does happen, actually you have a case by case basis. Everything that has to do with a violation of a code or a standard needs to be looked at within context, right, Dr. Thunder, right? Even, I mean, that's what courts are for example, within the realm of a criminal court and criminal offenses. Yes, it's a violation of the thing, but we have to look at the facts and the law and this and that and the other. So it's kind of interesting. They obviously got the same training. They obviously did the same kind of rehearsal and stuff
Yeah,
like
but
that.
I wanted
But
to add something
Here, one
there,
second,
right?
one second.
Because I think they are following.
Hey, Kaizo, just 1 second here. Thank you, Adrian Thomas, with the 199 super chat saying MIT's board backing their president. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so what I wanted to say is, if you look at this situation, I agree with you, Ike. They're definitely playing a game, and I believe that they've actually all got on the same page, like some perps, getting their story straight. But if you look at it logically from what free speech is, because I think what they're doing is they are being radical free speech advocates, is if it goes into conduct, meaning there is a movement, there is a whole group, let's say, anti-Jewish group, that is now spreading this rhetoric, that's conduct, right? They're conducting that speech into a behavior. Then, of course, that's anti-Semitism in a sense that it's now against the policies of the school. But if you just say, because here's the thing, you can say whatever you want. You can say, oh, all pygmies are ugly or something, or, you should get rid of them. But it has to be contextual for it to actually matter, meaning there has to be some kind of power, right? If they're saying it in auditoriums with large listeners, and that is the rhetoric of the whole conversation, then of course that is hate speech, etc. So I think what they're trying to do is, I get it with the whole policy thing, right? They're kind of playing a wormy game, but if you're looking at it from what free speech is and what constitutes as hate speech, the conduct depending how you want to characterize that, is quite pivotal to whether it should be allowed, or rather, etc. So I get them logically, right? But I also agree with you about the worm.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir. Now,
if I can
go
read
ahead, man.
something real quick. So uh so I got that I have not intentionally, but have been busy and was not paying close attention to these congressional hearings. And so a buddy of mine uh, actually sent me that clip that I played. And I responded to him, and this is how I responded. I said, "This is a tricky subject because, on the one hand, I'm a free speech advocate, which would include racist speech. And speech is not violence. But on the other hand, I'm sensitive about any genocidal rhetoric, and that could be seen as the same as yelling fire in a movie. A movie theater causing multiple deaths due to a stampede. They should have just said yes, even if there was nuance that a yes or no answer didn't facilitate. But unfortunately, the politicians at the universities trivialize this issue."
Politicians at the universities, indeed. Now, it's interesting. Yes, you took the words right out of my mouth when you mentioned the speech is not violence. Now, I go a little bit further with you in saying that I think that I agree with them, what they said, if they always say this, right? The issue I have is the inconsistency, right? Because, come on, if they came out and said, hey, calling for the genocide of blacks, you know what they would have said. Forget all the racism of America and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about what they would say. They would not be equivocating and saying, oh yeah, we gotta wait till LAR's head get bashed in first before we say it's a bad thing. They would have immediately said something. Now, if they consistently give this kind of an answer every time that hey, it's within context, that's right up my alley, right? I'm right there with them. But let me ask LAR directly. Okay, so colleges have created an environment where students have had carte blanche to kind of anything it goes when it comes to the oppressor, right? So if Ben Shapiro wants to come and talk, you can kick him out. If Charles Murray wants to come out to talk about his book, The Bell Curve, or whomever you think is a crazy white, even Jordan Peterson, right? He's now a crazy white, whatever, and you kick him out, right? So they've created this environment where speech is violence, right? And then they come to this situation, and it's like, hey, we haven't seen anything yet. No action, that kind of a thing. When just yesterday, you say something wrong about the right color or whatever, LGBT, whatever it is you say, let's get busy together, and it's violence, right? So what do you have to say about this inconsistency? If you were the president, what would you do, or what would you do in the past? Do you support my stance, to have a direct question, of free speech across the board right from the beginning? You should have let Ben Shapiro in, let Charles Murray and let Jordan Peterson say what he wants to say, and then let the people chant death to Israel too. Let everybody have at it. Well, what are your thoughts, Eliar?
Using even the Ivy League as a reference, this is why this whole scenario is trivial and silly. Ivy League schools have been known to notoriously be spaces for higher learning that used to have debates about hot topics, whether it be race, religion, history, whatever goes on. So what you're in essence saying is, oh, now that we're talking about quote unquote Jewish people, we're just supposed to scrap all of that because this is a conversation that should never be had. You're basically telling colleges, okay, you can't speak about this though. You can speak about everything else on your college campus, but not this. Which goes against the whole premise of the nature of higher education in America. Now, on top of that, we're going to sit here and act like we're living in a country that does the most ridiculous, racist, or insensitive things in college campuses every week. They still got fake Indians in Florida right now, right? It's not a problem, right? Because everybody can still do the chop, right? It's not a big deal, right? They still got the rebel flag and the stuff in Mississippi. at Ole Miss. They still got all of that stuff. It's not a big deal. You still got people going to campuses and getting harassed based on their race. It's not a big deal. But when it's this, it's a big deal. Now, here's the other thing. Just in an academic debate forum, I really think they don't want to have a debate about this, because I don't think when you put Israel and Palestine together as a discussion, Israel doesn't fit the definition of an oppressed people. They fit the definition of an oppressor. So it throws a monkey wrench in that whole debate. But fundamentally speaking, you're telling young men and women who go to college to think on a higher level that we can't think when it comes to certain things because it's black and white. We say so, it's this. Same thing happened with the LGBT stuff. They were canceling people, but they had to have the discussion. So now it poses a bigger question, because what you're saying is there's a big difference between a protected group and an exalted group. And that's what this is dangerously close, just basically becoming. Now, in reference to what's going on over there, I've never heard in my life where you could go to a college campus and talk about things that would happen globally and it was an issue. But now it's an issue. And the people say, yo, well, you know, I feel threatened. The issue with all of those things, and even in America, when it comes to anti-Semitism in America, it's normally a white-on-white crime. So other groups don't look at anti-Semitism the same that aren't white, because it's like when people say anti-Semitism, it's like, oh, some white people call some other white people some bad names or did something to other white people. That's normally what happens. That's who burns down the synagogues and try to shoot up the place, is other white people. It's not even Arabs. So it makes people kind of go, I don't understand what y'all doing at this point. Because what it sounds like is you can, how can I put this? Anti-Semitism is a problem. But when Jewish people are anti-other people, that's not a problem. When they're anti-Palestinian, that's not a thing. Anti-Muslim is not a thing. Anti-Black is not a thing. Anti-Hispanic is not a thing. And it's like, no, I'm pretty sure they are anti these other groups by the things that they say and do too. So you got to have, so on college campuses, those are the discussions you have to have. That's, you can go all the way back to Harvard and Yale and all those other things. They were doing it with Malcolm X. And you can go further back than that. That's what the movie The Great Debaters was about. That was decades before that. Like, they're trying to redirect what college is supposed to be about, and that's a problem. Sorry, I was long-winded.
No, that's great. Here, let me acknowledge
No
a couple
problem.
super
Go ahead.
chats. One by our illustrious moderator, Ike Ogiamian, saying Dusty Sand Babies. Uh-oh. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. And thank you for the big $50 sponsorship of the stream. Very much appreciated. And then we've got another one here, Leon 008, saying HM White XX versus White XX rules not apply. Thank you very much for that support. 46 people watching, only 25 likes. Please like the video. Like the video. Please like the video. Single most important thing for you to do is to like the video. Like, share, and support the show. And currently we have 26 1/4 likes. Because if you didn't know it,
There you go.
a thumbs down is equivalent to a quarter like. 27 1/4 likes now. Thank you.
There you go. There you go. LAR, the man of the people. You got a lot of fans in the chat today, LAR. But I must correct you, and I think Hoodservative corrected you in the chat. They're not exalted people. They are the chosen people. Okay, you need to get that right. The chosen people. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have been talking about the upsurge, right, in reported anti-Semitism. Dr. Thunder has a little snippet there of some facts, right? Increased reports and whatnot. And we
One,
started out by talking about, well, should
1 second.
go ahead, Eliar.
Doc, could you scroll that all the way up? Because they show incidents, and this was the issue that I was saying. When you read the incidents, this is what is considered anti-Semitism.
Eliar isn't having it.
No, it's not. It's not that I'm not having it. It's just that with other groups of people, a lot of this stuff would be looked at as suspect.
This is true. And last week we talked about Elon Musk and the fact that he responded to a tweet which was considered anti-Semitic. And the tweet was making a point about the kinds of intellectual pursuits championed by Jewish people, or the kind of intellectual pursuits where they represent a large part of the cohort, the postmodernist critical theory types, which is now being used against them, right? So it's like, they're being hung by, and then it was simply that was said to be anti-Semitic. So 100% I agree with you. A lot of things that are just kind of like out there, and then Mr. Kaizo corrected us that, hey, it doesn't have to be anti-Semitic in your mind. It's whoever the hell wants it to be anti-Semitic. If it even possibly has the 1% chance probability of inciting something, then yeah, they get to say that, right? But your point is definitely well taken, LAR. So we've addressed the question of should blacks rally and support the Jews against, anti-Semitic agitation. We've talked about does the university or do universities have a leg to stand on when it comes to their free speech stance? Because what we saw right now in Congress was like that's like a libertarian's wet dream. Like, yes, I mean, anything almost goes, right? I look at it in context, the nuance, and all that stuff. Like, yes, I like it. It's just that they don't have. What I hope, Dr. Thunder, is that they learn from this and continue to hold this kind of a line going forward. And I know it's not going to happen. Next year, they're going to turn around again and out other people that they don't like and stuff like that, and calling speech violence. But if you were to rewind the clock, I would say that they should have just started on this footing right from the beginning, and they would have no issue. And the reason they get called up, they have to get called up now, is because they don't have a good track record in this regard. Now, but speaking of identity and all these other things, and Mr. LER mentioned Malcolm X recently, we do have a recent story that Dr. Thunder alluded to earlier regarding the attempted arson, okay, of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthplace. Okay, so that's Martin Luther King's house, Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthplace. It was attacked by, I think her name is Lanisha Chantrice and whatnot. And it brings to, she's a veteran, by the way. And I'll mention some facts about it as we move on here. But I see LAR has a faint smile there. I don't know if it has anything to do with this case. But it calls to light, like, why this would happen. And we don't know. She might just be deranged. But there's been a lot of pushback against the kind of Martin Luther King integrationist and integrating people into a burning house. Those are his own kind of words, anyways. Right? Integration and color blindness, and we're very much not in that kind of an environment. In the current environment, being colorblind is racist. So being colorblind is not having your eyes open. It's kind of thing that LAR would say, like, oh, we're going to be colorblind now. We're going to assume that this guy didn't do this and these people didn't do that. We're going to assume that behind the boardrooms that they're not putting their people, all these other kinds of things, right? So perhaps we could start with Dr. Thunder. Okay, Martin Luther King, and I'll state some facts later after you guys had a chance to speak here regarding the arson. But Martin Luther King and his general approach of integration, and I know I am definitely making a caricature, right, of his position, if you will. But if you were to say generally it was integrationist and it was color-blind leaning, what do you think about that in our present day and time in 2023, Dr. Thunder?
Yeah. So first, let me address the caricature, and then I'll become a bit more nuanced and actually address Martin Luther King more specifically. I was against integrationism, and would have been against it right from the beginning. I'm more along the Malcolm X sort of perspective on this, and that is one generally of separatism, but not separatism with no association with other folks. I mean, you still have to be able to live and do deals and everything else with other folks. But separatism with respect to getting to the place where you, at your own, based on your own worth, your community's worth, your community's political capital, financial capital, and the like, actually have things that you can offer in an actual deal, so that you don't create resentment from the community that you're asking for something for, because you don't have anything of equal value to give, and you don't create entitlement in your own community, those that believe that the natural posture for them should be one of asking for a handout.
It's like a broke dude moving in with a woman.
Right. Hobosexual. And so my general view on this is integrationism. I think because many of the civil rights leaders, they moved from being more aligned with a let's acquire power and rights in all of this for our own community, unabashed, unashamed to ask for those things, to one of integrationism, where they sort of changed their song, and they saw that there was great benefit for them to change their position, either position change to benefit their own career. Many have thoughts that was the case, but they just started changing their song, changing the way that they were talking about this. Malcolm X constantly pointed out what he called the most dangerous thing to black people is the white liberal. The white liberal acts friendly, acts as if they are there to help you, but you don't actually. But really, they have other interests. They're doing what they need to do to acquire your allegiance, and then you find out that they weren't really on your team. Whereas at least the conservative will actually just tell you to your face that they're not down with you. Right? So I'd rather someone be honest and clear about what their intentions are, so then I can make whatever necessary adjustments to what I'm doing. I can know who I can trust and know who I can't trust. Right? So that was more like Malcolm X's sort of thing. Martin was, yes, he was more of an integrationist in a manner of speaking, but towards the end of his life, and I think this is part of what got him killed, he actually started moving more towards Malcolm X's position. And simultaneously, Malcolm X actually, a lot of the edge was removed from his position when he came back from Mecca, and he saw people all sort of associating together. So it's very interesting that at the end of their lives, they both started moving closer together in their perspective, albeit still very much different viewpoint. So, I mean, I'm fine with you know, I just think that integration has done most of the damage to the Black community, because prior to integration, we had to trust each other, we had to collaborate with each other, and there weren't these, the white man's ice is colder. There weren't a lot of that, these other options for us to take our money and spend it elsewhere. We had to keep the money in our community. And though obviously we did not have equal protection under the law, and there were a lot of issues, and separate but equal was not equal. But it's a it's a challenging sort of puzzle. I don't think that integration forcing us to relocate and to basically diffuse the sort of political power that we were gathering, I don't know that that was particularly helpful for us. I mean, perhaps if they bust white folks into black neighborhoods too, but that's not how they worked. It was a one-directional thing, and I think very damaging. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Very good, very good. So I'm going to ask Kaiser to react there. You basically got what we're saying, right? You get the integration versus, hey, you don't have to go all the way separatist, but, well, integration when, integration how? I talk about the nodes and in the network logic, right? If I'm not a node that brings something valuable to the network, then I'm just going to be a pariah. I'm going to be a problem. I'm going to increase my problems, right? I might as well separate from the network and create a viable node. And then if I'm valuable, actually, the trade, the connections, and all those other kind of things will start happening in and of themselves, right? And by the way, Dr. Thunder, when you were mentioning the supposed or real political divide between black men and black women, and then you also mentioned the community thing, and then Rael is in the chat talking about, well, this kind of lack of community, right? That the black community is just a word. I just want to mention that there is no community where actually men and women align, right? We know that women tend to be more liberal, and men tend to be more conservative. Hence, if it was in a normal, natural community, that would not be a problem, right? I think that the problems that we're seeing are an artifact of some other problem, right? It's not that men and women should align. They tend not to, right? Generally speaking, in any community. But anyways, Kaizo, what are your thoughts here? Martin Luther King. We talked about Mr. What's his name? The young writer from I forget his name. A couple of weeks ago. We talked about the whole color blindness thing, and he was kind of like the focus. He wrote something, and Ted was against him. Coleman Hughes, right? Coleman Hughes did a TED talk about color blindness. We should treat others with regards to the content of their character, not the color of their skin, both in our personal lives and with regards to public policy and all these other kinds of things. And it sounds great. It sounds like a philosophical ideal. But what are your thoughts regarding this attitude of integration? And you can take, there are many, many ways in which it works. It's not just within the African American community, but generally speaking, integration and color blindness versus building your own thing and making sure you're a valuable node. And if those whom see you as valuable, yes, let them network with you. Otherwise, why force it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'll start off with the integration. So for me, I agree that a second. I agree with integration when it comes to a legal representation sort of aspect. So access to the same public facilities. So I'm talking about schools, I'm talking about access to police forces, etc., medical care. So there are certain things that, like, I believe the federal government or state government, but if it's something that affects generally the population that lives there, I'm all for those sort of
Perhaps maybe I'll
integration. I
use a
think
phrase which is well known within American political. You're talking about equality under the law, right? You want equality under the law.
yes,
It's kind of what you were referencing. Go ahead.
yes, exactly. So equality under the law, I'm all for that. I think the issue is because they did snipe a lot of Black American leaders all at the same time. We're talking about MLK. We're talking about the Muslim one. We're talking about the Marcus Garvey, the Jamaican, etc. They took strategic people off the map so that there was no Black community that still maintained after the integrated. So Black people now became I guess, second class within a greater white culture, and I think that was the issue. So if Black Americans had equality under the law, but they still maintain the cultures and businesses, right? As Dr. Thunder mentioned, I think Black Americans could be thriving far more than they already are. And in regarding the one about colorism as well, I mean, colorblind societies, that is the ideal, right? But colorblind society doesn't actually mean, if you look at it logically to the end, that would not mean that you ignore people's color. No, what it means is you have to take in context that this person is from this tribe, race, religion, and they will suffer from these very specific things. For example, if someone is colorblind and they can't see color, well, clearly you can't match them with the 2020 perfect vision pilot or sniper, because they simply can't do those things. So I think colorblindness actually is, it's not ignoring color, right? And in this case, it's actually acknowledging that there is diversity in many different aspects, and that this you're just refusing to make it the key thing in the experience, right? You'll kind of say, hey, look, color exists, great, but it's not that relevant in XYZ. However, we acknowledge that people of that color also experience XYZ. Therefore, we might be willing to do things like affirmative action, etc. So yeah, I don't even think color blindness is necessarily what people.
Hey,
LAR.
real
the
quick,
Dusty
let me
Kid.
acknowledge the
Oh,
super
yeah, go ahead.
chat. Thank you very much, Gregory Scotland, with the $20 super chat, saying even non-ADOS blacks such as Stokely Carmichael and Roy Ennis were part of the total black community before the integrationist policies took major effect. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. LAR, what are your thoughts? On the one hand, we have, Malcolm X, supposedly, in a caricature way, against Martin Luther King. We have the idea of colorblind we talked about a few weeks ago, and the idea of integration and how great it was going to be. And even Martin Luther King kind of warned about, integrating into a burning house, if you will. And you've heard everything that Dr. Thunder has said as well. What do you think about that idea of colorblindness, which kind of Martin Luther King has been painted with these days, and integration? What is the report? What is your report card? And what are your thoughts?
Well, because y'all should know this is a painting of Malcolm X behind me, actually.
Hmm.
The issue that I have with all of this stuff is the same issue that I have with the previous topic. Because what basically winds up happening is the Martin Luther King that you've been given and the Malcolm X that you've been given, to a degree, you're going with tropes, because the rest of the story will make you look a little differently. Everybody goes, well, I have a dream, but what happened to I've been to the mountaintop? That was the last speech. But it's not comfortable. He was one of the major people talking about reparations, was Martin Luther King.
Yep.
But that's not comfortable. What Malcolm X was saying about more Pan-Africanism in a sense, or getting along with others, was coming to the realization that, that Islam was actually a religion different from Christianity, which people of other races could actually get along in, which was the opposite of America. Because during the time period, what did they say? The most segregated day in America is Sunday at church. That's a culture shock to a degree. So I said all that to say this. What we wind up doing is taking a TV commercial type of historic look. Like, oh, Martin Luther King, I have a dream. That's all I know for the rest of my life. Malcolm X, by any means necessary. That's all I know for the rest of my life. So now you have you have people who are 60 and 70 years old who was alive to witness some of this stuff. That can't even tell you, oh, that's not the whole story. That's not what really happened all the way. They go, I have a dream too. So as far as the whole society, we got a society of idiots using revisionist history to make points to things that don't even make sense anymore. So what are we actually doing? Nothing. Did integration work? Was integration the message per se? No, it really wasn't. Basically, he was saying what Kaiser was saying back in the day. We need equal protection under the law. That's what integration was about. And then he found out at the end that we still won't get equal protection under the law. That's what happened. Yep. So that's where, I feel I brought my people into a burning house comes from. That's where, we need reparations since you've helped out everybody else in this country. That's where that comes from. So, and the same thing with all the leaders that got killed. That's what all of that comes from. So ultimately, what you have now, and using a reference to what we was talking about earlier, is people of all other groups in America using parts of our history for their benefit and wanting us to back them using the revisionist history to make it look like we were all on the same team when we're not. We've never been. It's all been a hustle from everybody. That's the issue. So what are we actually doing now? We're waiting on all of the people to die off because at this particular point, America is stupid. That's what's going on. Since America is getting dumber by the day, we can use all these tropes like football games and commercials to get you to believe in a new indoctrination. That's the problem. The young lady who tried to burn down the house. Oh, she's crazy. She's stupid. What does Martin Luther King's house have to do with any of your problems? Nothing. Nothing. So what are we going to? We're out here grasping for straws because we don't want to deal with the reality. And the reality is, actually, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were right. This country is crumbling. Just like other places in the world are crumbling. From it's not necessarily patriarchy, it's not patriotism. It's the need to get over at somebody else's expense. So what you have is a world now of people who are accustomed to getting over at somebody else's expense without taking into consideration that basically all of the first world countries are broke, so you can't get over on anybody now. What are you going to do now? That's why you see all these groups needing to feel oppressed and feel like they're going through something, because they stepped on everybody to get to where they are, and now there's really not enough in their coffers to sustain them in the near future. Didn't one of the presidents in Africa say, you know what, we're gonna cut off France and they're probably gonna be in the dark in 5 years? That's what's going on with the rest of the world. So, but guess what? Just like over there to over here, we'll go, Mandela. Yeah, I remember they made a song for them back in the day. That's all we're gonna know. You get what I'm saying? Julius Malema. Oh, I heard the name. Is that Dr. J's cousin? That's all we gonna know. So in essence, what everybody needs to actually do is use your smartphone to be fucking smart for once in your life and actually find out what's going on in the world and why it's the way it is.
Let's go.
I'm done. I'm
Shout
long-winded.
out. He's done.
One second here. Let's go. Hey, let me acknowledge the super chat from A Hill, the $20 super chat. Thank you very much. Says the conversation came fully to where it belongs. Our current state indeed. I wanted to say something about something that LAR mentioned. Now, he was talking about this segregated hour. Okay, this Sunday morning at 11 o'clock being the most segregated hour, of the week in America. See, one thing that's interesting about that is the underpinnings of that statement are that the goal of an integrated society is so that everything looks the same, right? So that all of these, communities, they have their proper percentage of black people, the proper percentage of women, of men, of Hispanic folks, of Asians, like this. And this is something that is stated as if it is a truism that 11 o'clock should not be segregated, quote unquote. Well, maybe it shouldn't be segregated, but it may not be mixed. Right? So this is I think is an artifact of multiculturalism. Multiculturalism which hand selects individuals as representatives of their community and places them in particular positions for the public gaze in order to convince that we have arrived, that we have gotten to this this dream that Martin was talking about. And we have not gotten there, and nor would seeing an unsegregated, quote unquote, 11 a.m. hour on Sunday mean that we had gotten there either. That would be all optics, no substance. It would be an empty symbolism. It wouldn't mean anything. And because if you look at Christianity through the ages, Christianity has always been, I'm not talking about mega church. First of all, that's not even the biblical model. It was always based on the people that were in a particular local community. And prior to our ability to travel, most of the history of Christianity would have been populations of people that did not, that all looked the same. They all came from the same place. This is why churches in Africa, say in Ethiopia, for instance, would have a certain look. Churches in Rome or churches in other places in Turkey, other places around the world would necessarily look different. But that wasn't seen as an issue because they were in communion, right? They still had equal representation. What's interesting is we have flipped that whole thing, again, revisionist history. We have flipped this whole thing to make it appear as though it is a challenge and a problem that American churches are, quote unquote, segregated. That's not a problem if they still have equal protection under the law. If they choose to convene as they wish, with whom they wish, but still have equal protection under the law, there's no problem. It's only when there is no equal protection under the law, there is no access, perhaps even if a particular church community bars entrance of their building to those that don't look like the general parishioner. That would be a problem and an issue, and you would need to address that. But this is just an empty talking point that is frequently used, and you see these mega churches, and in many respects, the academy is no different than a megachurch in this respect, celebrating the hundreds of countries represented in their church with all these flags about. Empty symbolism. Empty symbolism.
Yes, indeed. And much to LAR's chagrin, we're going to rebrand this the longest running Pan-African panel show starring LAR. Isn't that right, guys? This is Pan-African. Anyways, let's get a few facts down as we start to wind down here regarding the woman, right? Okay. A woman was arrested on Thursday afternoon after attempting to burn down Martin Luther King Jr.'s childhood home in Atlanta, right? The Atlanta Police Department said the woman poured gasoline over the house, the front porch of the house, basically, before being stopped. You know, somebody was recording her and all that good stuff. The action saved an important part of America's history tonight. She's being, charged with destruction of government property because I believe, I don't know what the right term is, the legal classification, but it's kind of like a monument, right? So I think it's that kind of a thing that she did. But we're going to start winding down and giving our closing thoughts. But I'm sorry, what's up, LAR? You going to say something?
No, I'm saying it's a federal offense.
Oh, it's a federal offense because the house is it's kind of government property. I assume it's kind of a protect.
It's a monument,
Okay,
right? Isn't
yes.
it like a
So
historic
a federal offense and
building or something?
Makes sense. And I will be interested in seeing what her. I hope she's not just like a crazy person. It'd be more interesting, right, if she has some real agenda and whatever, which is still crazy, right? I agree, LAR is still crazy, but not just meds crazy.
Yeah. But we don't really know if she was. We don't really know if she's gonna burn it down. We just know that she poured gasoline. Everything else is.
Everything else is conjecture, huh? The plot thickens.
They got her when she was trying to use the lighter. Yeah, they arrested her when they caught her trying to use the lighter. So she was trying to burn it down.
Yeah.
Me and Dre stood next to a burned down house with a handful of gas and a handful of matches. Y'all know Eminem. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give our closing thoughts. Okay, we've traversed a couple of topics, but they all relate insofar as we're talking about identity. Okay, integration, modes of protest, starting out with anti-Semitism and what the Ivy League stance with regards to that is, which now they're quite pro-free speech. And then we moved into segregation, integration, the current political state of the Black community. And don't come for me, Rael, when I say community or whatever. I don't know if you want me to say zip codes or subdivisions or neighborhoods or collective or whatever you want me to say. But and I think it's been a good, lively conversation, including both in the chat and whatnot. Thank you again to all the super chatters. But let's give our closing thoughts. Mr. Kaizo, okay, the Jew supporter, the Arab hater. He does not like the barbarians, okay? So what are your closing thoughts with regards to everything we've said and anything you want to add, Kaizo?
Yeah, so in regards of free speech, I think this is actually a good situation. The anti-Semitism going on, whether these colleges, Harvard, et al., if they're going to change how they generally treat people. We've seen certain universities blocking Ben Shapiro, blocking uh, Jordan Peterson, and other people as well, because they were non-aligned to the university's intersectionality theory or something. So this is going to be a nice little test to see if they do preach, or rather promote, free speech in general. And this is going to be a wake up call for them in this whole situation, because again, you have Jews who are also liberal, and you also have the liberals now who are anti-Jewish because of what's happening in Israel, etc. So on that hand, I think I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how free speech is resolved in these high institutions. Regarding the lady, I don't know, man. I think those guys were haters, the ones who caught her. I don't see any harm in just burning down a building. There was nobody inside, so. But that's just me, right? I'm a little bit of uncouth person, but I also felt wrong about her, because when they caught her, she just looked like a dead fish. Like, she wasn't moving, she wasn't fighting back or anything. Citizens arrested her. I don't think she was high on fentanyl, but I don't know, something else must have gone wrong.
Oh no.
And then regarding, yeah, they even took her to a mental health evaluation. Apparently, they just put her to prison. Apparently, she's normal, but we don't know. So yeah, so there's that part there. And regarding Black Americans and Africans in general, right? Africa descended people, who should we align with? And was the moving into the burning house, was that a good move? Generally, I think only time will tell. I do like some of the reasons why we got integrated. We had access to certain levels of education, and by education, I'm talking about having some of us who are more talented would have been able to participate in the highest level of technology, or research institutes, etc., like that. So if we hadn't integrated, that would have been far harder to have done. With a less integrated
White
society.
man's
So
ice
there
is
is some
colder.
positives. Yep. Exactly. So yeah, so I think that's my views.
Nice. So, LAR, go ahead. What are your closing thoughts, sir?
As far as integration, people forget why Hartsfield Jackson is named Hartsfield Jackson Airport in Atlanta. People seem to forget about Mayor Morial. People seem to forget the thing about Harold Washington dying. People seem to forget about I always mess his name up because he got high in D.C. Not Mayor Washington, but Mayor the guy that died. I'm sorry. I'll get back to it. But in general, what I'm saying is this: Mayor Jackson made it so in Atlanta, the government contracts went by basically race, by percentages. So it made Black people have more money because we were able to get government contracts and city contracts. They did the same thing in New Orleans. I think that's what Harold Washington was trying to do in Chicago. That was furthering the part of, after the integrating into a burning house. That's when you saw a lot of Black mayors and things were starting to slowly change. That's why a lot of these cities, for the most part in states, started having predominantly white mayors after that, to reverse all of that type of stuff, especially in Black cities. So that's what has been going on for years. So when y'all think about, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, you forget what happened after that. You get what I'm saying? So that's the point. The point is, if you notice these other groups of people, when they get into office like that, somehow they can divvy up resources and contracts to their own ethnic or religious group. And it's not a problem. That's how America's been working past that integration political part. So that's the issue. Ultimately, with the lady with the Martin Luther King thing, they're gonna say, a Black woman stabbed Martin Luther King in the chest because she didn't want to, because she hated on the civil rights movement. Now, a Black woman tried to burn his house down. The two cops was two off-duty NYPD cops who was in Atlanta, who were tied. That's people gonna say something fishy going on all the way around, but they're gonna try to make excuses for this lady, and she out of her mind. And I don't mean out of her mind like off her meds, out of her mind. She just reckless. So let's just call a spade a spade. You know, as far as the, you know, Israel-Palestine thing, we got to live in reality, man. No, is nowhere around it. You know, Israelis aren't innocent, Palestinians aren't innocent, but only one group is being oppressed out of that scenario. So if you can't say that Palestinians are being oppressed when history says so, and our tax dollars pay for it to be so, and you can't say that in America, we have a fundamental problem just in a general sense. Because guess what? We can say other people are oppressed. And let's just be honest. In America, nobody cares if people are oppressed as long as I got money coming into my bank account. That's when people have an issue. Being oppressed, when the green, it's not when the green color slows up, that's when this oppression rises with other people. So that's my 2 cents. I'll remember the mayor's name later.
As long as Cash App is still Cash Apping, Zelle is still flowing, you know, it's all good. It's all good. So,
Marion
Dr.
Barry.
Thunder.
Thank you, Marion Barry.
Yeah, Dr. Thunder, you're going to close us out. This has been another installment of Case Closed, highest level conversation on the most relevant topics in this space. Also, the longest running Pan African. Go ahead, Dr. Thunder.
Alrighty. Yeah, you know, it's as I was saying before. I don't have a dog in the fight. I think, in general, black men need to be more specific about what battles they're willing to fight. I think that we have been used too often to fight other people's battles, and so we feel guilty, or we feel, you know, we feel guilty. We feel guilty. We feel like we should be doing this. We're too generous with that. And unfortunately, since we're the sort of low man on the totem pole, no one else is really trying to help us. I'm not totally opposed to the way that these rather direct questions were directed to these university presidents. I'm not altogether displeased with the sentiment that they were attempting to express. They should have just said yes, and then that could have allowed for, at a later date, further nuance associated. But either way, if the desire is to defend folks from hate speech, is to defend people from possible genocide, threats of genocide and the like, I am for defending that for people that are here, attending universities here. I would also, though, appreciate if that sentiment would be extended to black men and boys. Come with that same energy. If you come with that same energy, I'm good. It's when it's inconsistent that it starts to get weird, and that I have a problem. But if you're going to come with that same energy, you can toe that line. I'm just going to be looking at you when other issues arise if you towing that line still the same way. So, yeah, I mean, and this issue with this woman that apparently it was attempting to burn down the house. I mean, more information will come out, and we'll be able to talk, more completely on that issue. But it seems like she was a veteran, and it does seem pretty strange to me. So you wonder if there is I don't know, some mental instability there, or whatever. But we'll see what comes out of it. Anyhow, that's our time. Thanks, folks, for coming here. Thanks for all the supporters, all the super chatters, and thank you for making 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sundays your residence. So we'll see you next week. Peace out.